Well, Chukwuemeka Ujam joins us now. He's the Commissioner of Lands and Urban Development for the Enugu State Government. Morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Morning.
Well, yes, indeed, you heard Mr. Onyinla cancel to MFM, complaining and making his points known to us. What's your response to this? I mean, how did this happen?
Well, thanks for performing what I'll call investigative journalism. It's good to hear from both sides of the argument. The Mountain of Fire Miracles Ministry were occupying a portion of land on Zik Avenue. They approached government on various occasions for building approvals. I recall that the first approval was sought and given.
When was it?
This was more than 10 years ago. But the church has continued to expand. The second approval they sought was for expansion of the building. And what they submitted to us on ground physically was not what was being built.
How?
So, for instance, I have papers here. The original parcel of land they have, or had, was just above 2,000 square meters. Their drawing plan shows that the area of land they're after, that they have, is 2,786. So clearly, from the get-go, they were going to build into a river. And we wrote them.
At the time the second approval was sought?
Yes. And we wrote them and said to them, you're encroaching into a river.
When did you write them?
Well, the last letter we wrote them concerning this was in 2011.
The first letter was what I want to know.
When you say first letter denying the...
No, the first letter is saying that you are encroaching on a river. Watch it.
2011.
2011 was when the first letter was written.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the point here is this. There's a setback. There's a minimum setback by law from any water course. For a church body, we also think about circulation of vehicles, exit routes, adequate parking. And clearly from what they were submitting, it couldn't happen. I'm happy you've seen stills. Can you imagine what would have happened if during one of the services a flood just came through and people would have died?
Okay, we'll come to that, but what about the third approval? Was there any such thing as seeking an approval for the third part of the expansion?
There's been dialogue, put it that way. There's been dialogue
about it.
Yes, there's been dialogue. We've never, as a government, approved the so-called expansion. From the stills, you can see what will be termed an older structure, and then you can see the new buildings that are going on, or that was going on, and clearly, you could see it's less than a meter into the river.
Okay, but that was the expansion.
Yep.
For the second phase.
Yep.
You said the first one, approval was given.
Yep.
But when the government went in to demolish, you took everything down.
Well, it's in contravention.
The second one or
second
the
and
first
first?
one?
Second and first. Because it's one plot. It's one plot. We cannot isolate the structure. We have to take everything down. And we're already, because we're past that stage. Recall that what they had on ground was 2,000 square meters. I allocated 4,000 square meters to them.
When was this?
Last year, or early this year.
Would there have been anything wrong, or is it impossible to demolish the expansion and leave the original plan, since you said the first one was in order?
I guess
does it work?
Well, it doesn't really work in these circumstances.
Or could you have asked them to remodel? I mean, to suit the plan and the area, and in such a way that it doesn't encroach into the river.
And not an outright demolition.
Well, we could see impending disaster.
No, but you know, government also needed to have a human face. If government had communicated that to them, wouldn't it make sense?
So, this is actually part of government having a human face.
By pulling everything down.
They have worshippers. We're actually saving lives. Because something could have happened and all of them would have died.
You know what I don't understand, sorry to come in here, is if you say this X amount was given and they got an approval, and when they decided to expand, the expansion would amount to harm coming to some individual or citizens or worshippers, why don't you restrict them to their small enclave, which they have been maintaining before the approval was given or sought for an extension. Because the argument now is that the entire structure was demolished, knowing full well that it wasn't the entire structure that was getting in the way of this particular river.
So, you see, what you're saying is the fact. But clearly, they had no intention of restricting themselves to the original approval. And mind you, they were also, I mean, as I said...
Why did you say so?
The building plan submitted was quite different from what they were building. So they submitted a box and were building a circle.
Yeah, I beg your pardon, but I mean, one would have wondered, in order to come to that conclusion, they assumed that government would have said, okay, restrict yourself to the first plan. Do not go beyond the first plan. If you go beyond the first plan, this is what we will do. Was that done?
Well, I didn't write those letters, so I don't know. But the thing is, there's an issue here.
Yeah.
Clearly, the structure that was there was defective. You can see it.
That's the expansion.
But it's a contiguous building. It's not like there's space between the original infrastructure and the extension.
But now, the government has taken over both the original one that wasn't in contravention and the part that was in contravention.
Yes.
Now, you say that you've given them 4,000 square meters, I think, in compensation for the land that you have taken away from them. Am I correct?
Call it compensation, call it human face of government. We needed to move them.
Well, the thing is this. I mean, the way it works is that if you're taking if you're revoking a C of O, they have a legal C of O. Government is government. Government can revoke C of O, but you have to give compensation, right?
Not really. Not really.
You don't have to?
You have various reasons for revoking land. If you revoke a property because the person has flouted the conditions, you don't owe that person anything, because the person signs up to agreeing to the terms and conditions of the COV.
Well, there's only one way of determining if the person has contravened anything, is to go to the courts. They claim that he went to court and that you asked to settle out of court. Is that right?
We didn't ask to settle out of court. We were holding discussions because we needed to move them quickly.
Are you saying that you put up a defense in court when they went there?
Well, that's a matter for the Attorney General. I didn't go to court. I don't know what
You're not
happened.
aware of any legal proceedings on a particular piece of land?
I'm aware of legal proceedings, but
you're
I'm not aware of the outcomes.
what they are?
No, I'm not.
So you just went ahead and demolished a piece of land without knowing the legal status of what was happening in your Attorney General's office? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we could see impending disaster, and we needed to move quickly to save lives. That is paramount.
We totally understand that. What we're saying is there is, even in trying to save lives, it is even what we call due process. If the church believes, because I don't think that the church will want to put its members in jeopardy, if the church feels very strongly that the government has ulterior motives in this particular issue, here we are, we have a C of O that was given to us by the government. Each time we have sought to expand, we have gone back to the same government. The government now believes in 2011 that we have contravened certain things. And they said they could read from your body language that, you were going to demolish. So they took their case to the court. They said you never put up a defense in court, that you asked to settle out of court. You're saying you don't know anything about that.
I don't believe that the state government wouldn't have put up a defense in court. That's a lie.
They say that they had, one of their complaints is that they had court orders restraining you from taking any action on that particular piece of land. All of that was flagrantly violated.
I don't have any court order. I don't have any injunction restraining me from performing my duties.
But how would you know that?
Let me correct an impression,
office.
please. Let me correct an impression. It's not only Mountain of Fire. There's another company that we also had to move out, because these guys were encroaching on the water plains. So it's not a target. They're not a target.
The issue here is the Mountain of Fire. I mean, that's what we're discussing.
No, you alluded to the fact that they think that they are the target.
No, I have not even mentioned that. You have said that you don't know what the legal status is because that is in your Attorney General's office. I'm a little curious to think that you will go ahead and take action without knowing, without caring to know what the status of any of the legal matter is in your Attorney General's office.
No, that's not the point. You see, you can decide to write letters. You could be in court. But as long as the courts don't say, stop doing your work.
How would you know?
They write me. I'm the Commissioner for Lands. They would write me.
Yeah, but
nobody wrote me.